The rain was falling hard on the glass walls of the private hospital in Lagos when Kofi Adeyemi spoke the words that would change many lives forever. His voice was calm, cold, and sharp, like a knife that did not shake. "I don't want a child," he said. "Do whatever you must." For a moment, the room went silent except for the sound of rain and the soft beeping of machines. The nurse looked at him with wide eyes, her mouth slightly open, as if she had just heard something against nature itself. On the bed nearby, Amara Nwoye lay weak and tired, her hands resting on her round stomach. Her eyes filled with tears, but none fell yet. In that moment, before the story even began, a heavy truth was already hiding behind Kofi's words, waiting to break hearts. Kofi Adeyemi was not just any man. In Lagos, his name carried weight. He owned tall buildings that touched the sky, factories that never slept, and cars that never stopped shining. People spoke his name with respect and fear. He had grown from nothing, or so the newspapers said, into one of the richest men in West Africa. His face often appeared on magazines, always serious, never smiling. To the world, Kofi was success itself. But inside that hospital room, with the smell of medicine and fear in the air, his wealth could not cover the coldness in his eyes. Amara had met Kofi 2 years earlier at a business dinner where she worked as an assistant to a consulting firm. She was from Ibadan, from a middle-class family that believed in hard work and kindness. She was not loud, not proud, but she was strong in a quiet way. Kofi noticed her because she listened when others talked, and because her smile felt real in a room full of fake ones. What started as secret meetings became something deeper, at least for Amara. For Kofi, it was comfort, warmth, something he allowed himself only at night. When Amara told him she was pregnant, she expected fear, maybe shock, but not this. She had believed that somewhere inside this powerful man was a heart that could soften. But Kofi's face had gone pale that day, his hands shaking just a little before he hid them. He did not shout. He did not ask questions. He only said, "This must not happen." Now, weeks later, after stress and pain had pushed Amara into the hospital, he stood there repeating it. "I don't want a child." His eyes did not meet hers. He stared at the floor, as if looking at her would break something inside him that he worked very hard to keep locked. "Kofi," Amara whispered, her voice weak but clear. "Please. Just look at me." He did not. The nurse cleared her throat and said softly, "Sir, she needs rest." "And the baby?" Kofi raised his hand, stopping her. "I will take care of everything," he said. "Money will not be a problem." The nurse looked away, ashamed. Money was always his answer. That night, Amara cried quietly after Kofi left. She cried not because she was poor or scared, but because the man she loved had chosen fear over love. Outside, Lagos moved on. Cars passed, people laughed, music played in distant bars. Life did not stop for a broken heart in a hospital room. By morning, Amara made a decision. She would leave. She would not beg. She would not fight. She would carry her child with dignity, even if she had to do it alone. When Kofi returned later that day, he found the bed empty. Only a small note lay on the table. "I will not force you to be a father. But I will be a mother. Goodbye." Kofi read the note once, then folded it slowly. His chest felt tight, but he pushed the feeling down, the same way he had done for many years. He called his driver, adjusted his suit, and walked out of the hospital as if nothing had happened. To the world, Kofi Adeyemi remained strong. But that night, alone in his big house, sleep refused to come. When it finally did, it brought a dream. He saw a small child standing in the rain, crying. Every time Kofi tried to move closer, the child disappeared. He woke up sweating, his heart beating fast. He told himself it was nothing. Just stress. In Ibadan, Amara arrived at her aunt's small house with a single suitcase and a heavy heart. The city welcomed her with warm air and familiar smells. Life there was slower than Lagos, kinder in some ways. Still, fear followed her. How would she raise a child alone? How would she explain the father's absence? She placed her hand on her stomach and whispered, "I will protect you." Back in Lagos, Kofi threw himself into work. Meetings, flights, deals. He avoided silence. Yet, every time he passed a school or heard a baby cry, something twisted inside him. He told himself children brought weakness. He told himself he had reasons. Reasons he never shared with anyone. What Kofi did not know, what no one knew yet, was that his fear of a child was born long before Amara ever entered his life. It was tied to blood, loss, and a lie he had believed since he was a boy. A truth buried deep, waiting patiently. And as the rain returned to Lagos that night, the fate of a man who said, "I don't want a child," began to move, quietly and without mercy. Amara's life in Ibadan began again under a sky that looked kinder than Lagos, but kindness did not mean ease. The city moved at its own gentle pace, with dusty roads, shouting traders, and the smell of fresh bread in the mornings. She stayed in her aunt's small house, a place filled with laughter, old furniture, and memories. Her aunt, Mama Sod, asked no questions at first. She only looked at Amara's growing belly and nodded, as if she understood more than words could say. In that house, Amara learned how heavy silence could be and how strong love needed to be to survive without wealth. Money was tight. Amara found work as a school clerk, earning just enough to cover food and small savings for the baby. She woke up early every day, walked through narrow streets, and smiled even when her feet hurt. At night, she talked to her unborn child, telling stories about courage and honesty. She never spoke Kofi's name. She told herself that her child would grow without bitterness. Still, some nights, tears soaked her pillow as she wondered how love could turn so cold so fast. When the time came, it came suddenly. One evening, the sky turned dark, and the power went out across the neighborhood. Candles were lit, and prayers were whispered. Amara's pain began under that weak candlelight. Mama Sod held her hand, speaking calm words while neighbors rushed to help. There was no fancy hospital, no private room, only strength, fear, and hope. When the baby finally cried, the sound filled the house like a song from heaven. A boy. Healthy. Quiet after the first cry, as if listening to the world. They named him Malik, a name meaning king, even though he was born with nothing. Amara held him close, tears of joy washing away months of fear. In that moment, she felt rich in a way money could never match. The blackout ended hours later, but something else had already been lit inside her heart. In Lagos, Kofi received the message that the baby had been born. His assistant spoke gently, as if afraid. "It is a boy, sir." Kofi closed his eyes. For a second, his chest felt tight, like it did in his dreams. He said nothing for a long time, then nodded. "Send money," he said finally. "Make sure they have enough." His voice was flat. He ended the call and returned to his work, convincing himself that money was enough. Weeks turned into months. Malik grew fast, with wide curious eyes and a calm nature that surprised everyone. He rarely cried. When he did, it was soft, like a question, not a demand. Neighbors loved him. Mama Sot called him an old soul. Amara watched him closely, sometimes afraid, sometimes amazed. She worked, she cooked, she sang to him. Life was hard, but it was full. Kofi, on the other hand, began to change in small ways he did not notice at first. He started waking up at night, hearing a baby cry that was not there. During meetings, his mind wandered. He saw flashes of candlelight, felt a weight in his arms he had never held. He blamed stress. He blamed business pressure. He refused to say the word father. One afternoon, while visiting an old area of Lagos for a charity event, Kofi saw a group of children playing barefoot in the dust. One boy looked up and smiled at him. The smile struck Kofi like a blow. His legs felt weak, and he had to lean on his car. His guards rushed to help, but he waved them away. That night, the dream returned. The child in the rain was closer now, his face clearer, his eyes full of sadness. In Ibadan, an old woman named Nene Esi began visiting Mama Soda's house. She was respected in the area, known for her wisdom and quiet words. When she saw Malik, she grew serious. She held the baby's hand and whispered a prayer. Later, she pulled Amara aside. "This child carries a heavy path," she said softly. "Not because he is weak, but because others are afraid." Amara felt a chill but said nothing. Back in Lagos, Kofi sat alone one night, staring at a framed photo of his mother. He rarely touched it. His jaw tightened. "I will not repeat the past," he whispered to the empty room. He did not explain who he was speaking to, or what past he feared so much. As Malik slept peacefully under a mosquito net in Ibadan, and Kofi stared into the darkness of his mansion, two lives moved forward on different roads. One filled with struggle and love, the other with wealth and fear. Neither knew that those roads were slowly bending toward each other, carrying with them a truth that would soon demand to be faced. Malik learned to walk before he learned to speak, taking slow careful steps across the small yard in Ibadan while Amara watched with both joy and fear. He was a quiet child, the kind that observed more than he asked. His eyes followed people closely, as if he was trying to understand their hearts. Neighbors often said he did not act like other children his age. When other boys fought over toys, Malik would sit and wait, then offer the toy back with a gentle smile. Amara felt proud, but sometimes uneasy, as if her son carried thoughts too heavy for his small body. As Malik grew, life continued to test Amara. School fees rose, food prices climbed, and work became harder to keep. Some days she returned home tired and silent, holding her worries inside so Malik would not feel them. At night, she prayed quietly, asking for strength, not riches. She never asked Kofi for more than he sent. She told herself that dignity was worth more than comfort. In Lagos, Kofi's world looked perfect from the outside, but inside, cracks were forming. The dreams came almost every night now. The crying child no longer stood in the rain alone. A woman appeared beside him, her face hidden, her hands shaking. Kofi woke up each time with his heart racing, his mouth dry. He began avoiding sleep, working late, traveling often. His staff noticed the change, but no one dared ask questions. The turning point came in Accra. Kofi had traveled there for a big business conference, one that promised even more power and influence. The hotel was grand, filled with polished floors and soft music. During a break between meetings, Kofi stepped outside to get air. That was when he saw them. Amara stood across the street, holding Malik's hand. She had traveled for a training program, hoping for better work opportunities. Malik was now 3, wearing a simple shirt and sandals, his hair neatly trimmed. Kofi froze. His breath caught in his chest. Malik looked up and their eyes met. Time seemed to stop. The noise of the city faded. Malik stared at Kofi with calm curiosity, then took a small step forward. "Why are you sad?" the child asked in a soft, clear voice. The words hit Kofi harder than any accusation. He staggered back, his vision blurring. Guards rushed to him as he collapsed to the ground. When Kofi woke up in his hotel room, doctors surrounded him. They said it was stress, exhaustion. Kofi nodded, but he knew better. The child's face was burned into his mind. He sent his assistant to find Amara, but she was already gone. She had seen him fall and felt fear twist inside her. She left Accra that same evening, protecting Malik from questions he was too young to answer. Back in Lagos, Kofi could no longer escape the past. Memories he had locked away began to surface. He saw himself as a small boy, sitting beside a hospital bed. He heard shouting, then silence. His mother's face, pale and still. He remembered being told she died giving birth, that children bring pain, that love costs lives. He remembered the rich men who walked past her that day, refusing help because she had nothing to offer them. But that part of the story had always been told in whispers, never clearly. Kofi visited his uncle Tand for the first time in years. Tand lived in a modest house, far from the noise of the city. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes were sharp. When Kofi spoke of the child and the dreams, Tand sighed deeply. "You cannot run from blood," he said. "What you fear is not the child. It is the lie you were raised with." Kofi's hands shook. "My mother died because of me," he said. Tand shook his head slowly. "No. She died because people with power chose greed over mercy." Those words echoed in Kofi's mind long after he left. For the first time, anger replaced fear. Anger at the past, at himself, at the truth he had refused to face. He thought of Malik's question. "Why are you sad?" He realized he did not have an answer. In Ibadan, Nene Esi returned, watching Malik play. She smiled sadly. "The father has seen him," she said, as if stating a fact written in the wind. Amara's heart skipped. Fear and hope battled inside her. She looked at her son and wondered how long she could protect him from a truth that was already moving toward them. As night fell in both cities, the distance between father and son grew smaller, not in miles, but in destiny. The past was awake now, and it was no longer willing to stay silent. Kofi did not sleep the night after speaking with his uncle. The words stayed in his head like a drum that refused to stop beating. By morning, he knew he could not continue living the way he had been. For the first time in many years, he cancelled meetings, ignored calls, and asked his driver to take him not to an office, but to Ibadan. The road stretched long and dusty, giving him too much time to think. Each passing village, each child by the roadside, felt like a reminder of what he had tried so hard to avoid. Amara was folding clothes when Kofi arrived at Mama Soda's house. His car stopped outside, clean and expensive, looking out of place on the narrow street. Neighbors gathered, whispering. When Amara saw him step out, her heart dropped. Malik was inside, playing with a wooden car. Nene Esi sat quietly nearby, as if she had been expecting this moment. Kofi removed his jacket, his hands trembling slightly. He had faced presidents and crowds, but this felt harder. "I did not come to fight," Kofi said softly when Amara stood before him. His voice had lost its sharp edge. "I came to understand." Amara crossed her arms, guarding herself. "Understanding does not change the past," she replied. "You left." Kofi nodded. "I know. And I was wrong." The words felt heavy, but freeing. They sat in the small living room, the air thick with tension. Malik peeked from behind a chair, watching the stranger. Kofi's heart tightened. Nene Esi cleared her throat. "Some truths must be spoken aloud," she said. "Or they will poison generations." She turned to Kofi. "Your fear was planted in you, not born with you." Kofi swallowed hard. He spoke then, slowly, painfully. He told them about his mother, about the story he had believed all his life, about how he thought children brought death. As he spoke, Tears filled his eyes, the first Amara had ever seen from him. Nana Esi listened, then shook her head. Your mother did not die because she gave birth, she said firmly. She died because the powerful closed their doors. Because wealth chose itself. The room fell silent. Amara felt anger rise, but also pity. She had carried her pain alone for years, but now she saw the broken boy inside the billionaire. Fear does not excuse cruelty, she said. Kofi bowed his head. I know. I do not ask forgiveness yet. I ask for a chance to do right. Malik walked closer then, standing in front of Kofi. He looked up with the same calm eyes. Are you going to stay? He asked simply. The question cut deeper than any blame. Kofi knelt, his knees touching the floor. If you allow me, he whispered. Change did not come all at once. Kofi began visiting often, quietly, without cameras or guards. He listened more than he spoke. He learned Malik's favorite foods, his fears, his laughter. Amara watched closely, refusing to rush trust. Still, she could not ignore the way Malik leaned toward Kofi, as if recognizing something familiar. In Lagos, rumors began to spread. Why was Kofi disappearing so often? Why were meetings delayed? His board grew uneasy. Accepting a child from a middle-class woman could shake his perfect image. Kofi knew the risk, but for the first time, he did not run. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Malik sat beside Kofi and rested his head on his arm. You don't look sad today, he said. Kofi smiled through tears. For the first time, hope did not feel dangerous. But Nana Esi watched from the doorway, her face serious. She knew that healing often comes before a test, and that some lessons arrive only through loss. As peace began to settle, fate was already preparing its final, cruel turn. For a while, life seemed to breathe again. Not loudly, not proudly, but softly, like a careful promise. Kofi began spending more time in Ibadan than in Lagos. He drove himself sometimes, wearing simple clothes, leaving his title behind on the highway. People noticed, but he did not care. For the first time, his days were not ruled by numbers and meetings, but by small moments that felt larger than anything he had owned. Malik started school at a modest private school nearby. On the first day, Kofi stood at the gate, watching from a distance as Amara held Malik's hand. When the boy turned and waved, Kofi felt something break and rebuild inside him at the same time. He had built towers of glass and steel, but this single wave felt stronger than all of them. At home, Malik asked simple questions that carried deep weight. Why do you live far? Why do you work so much? Why didn't you come before? Kofi answered slowly, choosing honesty over comfort. I was afraid, he said one evening as they sat under the mango tree. Malik nodded, as if fear was something he already understood. It's okay, he replied. You came now. Those words stayed with Kofi. He began making plans, careful and hopeful. He spoke with lawyers, not to hide, but to prepare. He wanted to stand openly as Malik's father. He planned to move Amara and Malik to a better home, still simple, but safer. He promised Amara that Malik's future would not be decided by fear or silence. Amara listened, cautious but moved. She had learned not to trust words alone, but Kofi's actions were changing, slowly and steadily. One afternoon, Malik fell while playing football at school. He scraped his knee, nothing serious, but when Amara picked him up, she noticed he felt hot. That night, the fever came. Amara gave medicine and prayed. Kofi sat by the bed, holding Malik's small hand. I'm here, he whispered again and again, as if saying it could push sickness away. The fever did not break. By morning, Malik was weak, his breathing shallow. Panic filled the room. They rushed him to the nearest hospital, a public one, crowded and loud. Nurses moved quickly but with tired eyes. Hours passed. Malik cried softly, then grew quiet. Kofi's chest tightened as memories he hated came rushing back. The smell of the hospital. The waiting. The helplessness. "I will move him to a private hospital," Kofi said, already reaching for his phone. Amara nodded, fear shaking her body. The ambulance came, but traffic was heavy. Lagos felt far away. Every minute stretched like a punishment. Malik's eyes fluttered open once. He looked at Kofi and smiled faintly. "You stayed," he whispered. Kofi could not speak. He only squeezed the boy's hand. At the private hospital, doctors rushed Malik inside. Kofi paced the hall like a trapped animal. He shouted orders, offered money, begged in ways he never had before. Amara sat quietly, tears falling without sound. Nene Esi arrived later, her face calm but her eyes deep with knowing. She placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "love has already spoken." Hours later, the doctor came out. His face said everything before his words did. The infection had spread too fast. If Malik had arrived earlier, maybe. If the system had been kinder, maybe. Kofi felt the world tilt. He pushed past the doctor into the room. Malik lay still, machines silent now. Kofi fell to his knees beside the bed. "I was afraid of losing you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "So I stayed away." And now, he could not finish. He pressed his forehead to Malik's hand. Amara cried out, a sound raw and deep, a mother's heart tearing open. Nene Esi closed her eyes and began to pray. The days that followed passed like a fog. Malik was buried under a quiet sky. Children from the neighborhood came, holding flowers. Teachers cried. Kofi stood apart, dressed simply, his wealth meaningless. The man who once feared a child now wished he could trade everything for one more moment. After the burial, Kofi changed completely. He sold properties, closed accounts, and poured his money into building children's hospitals and free clinics across cities like Ibadan, Accra, and Lagos. He demanded fair treatment for the poor, fast care for children. Some praised him. Others questioned his sudden kindness. Kofi did not explain. He did not need to. He moved into a small house near the clinic he helped build. Every evening, children gathered, and Kofi told them stories. Stories about fear, about love, about time. Sometimes he smiled. Often, he cried when no one was looking. Amara returned to her quiet life, carrying grief like a scar that never fully healed. But she also carried pride. Malik had known love. That mattered. The lesson spread quietly, like a whisper carried by the wind across Africa's cities and villages. Power without love is empty. Fear can steal tomorrow. And when the heart delays kindness, destiny does not wait. If this story touched your heart, remember to subscribe to this channel, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with us till the end of every tale, because some lessons only reveal themselves when the story is complete. The house in Ibadan became quiet in a way that felt wrong. Not peaceful, not calm, but empty, like a song that stopped in the middle. Malik's small sandals still rested by the door. His wooden car lay under the mango tree, half covered with dust. Amara could not bring herself to move them. Each object felt like proof that he had been real, that he had laughed, that he had lived, even if only for a short time. Kofi stayed for weeks after the burial. He slept little. When he did sleep, he dreamed of Malik running ahead of him, always just out of reach. He woke each time with the same words on his lips. "I'm here." But the room was always silent. For the first time in his life, silence defeated him. One evening, Kofi sat alone in the clinic he had helped build, long after the nurses had gone home. The walls were white, clean, full of promise. Children's drawings hung in the hallway, bright suns and smiling faces. He stared at them until his eyes burned. "You came too late," he whispered to himself. Not to fate. Not to the system. To himself. Amara finally spoke the truth he had been avoiding. "You did love him," she said quietly one night as they sat outside. "But love delayed can still destroy." Kofi nodded. He did not argue. There was nothing left to defend. In Lagos, the world watched his transformation with confusion. The billionaire who once ruled boardrooms now refused luxury. He cancelled deals that harmed communities. He demanded hospitals treat poor children before rich ones. When people asked why, he answered simply, "Because delay kills." Some laughed. Some listened. Some changed. Years passed. Kofi grew older, his hair touched by grey. He never married. He never had another child. Every year, on Malik's birthday, he traveled quietly to Ibadan. He cleaned the small grave himself. He spoke to the earth like a man confessing. "I was afraid," he would say. "I thought power could protect me. I was wrong." Children still gathered around him in the evenings at the clinic. They called him Uncle Kofi. He told them stories, not of riches, but of choices. He taught them that fear is loud but love is patient. Sometimes, a child would ask, "Why do you help us so much?" Kofi would smile sadly. "Because someone once needed help," he would answer. He never said the name. Amara rebuilt her life slowly. The pain never left, but it softened at the edges. She became a teacher, guiding children with the same gentleness she once gave Malik. Sometimes she caught herself smiling when a child asked a deep question too early for their age. In those moments, she felt Malik close, like a warm memory instead of a sharp wound. One rainy evening, many years later, Kofi collapsed while telling a story at the clinic. His heart, tired and heavy with regret, finally gave way. He was taken to the same hospital system he had fought to change. Doctors worked hard, quickly, without asking for money. He smiled faintly as they did. "Good," he whispered. "That is how it should be." Kofi Adeyemi died quietly that night. At his burial, there were no luxury cars, no loud speeches. Only children, nurses, teachers, and ordinary people stood together. Amara was there, standing at a distance. When the rain began to fall, she did not move. She looked at the sky and spoke softly, "You learned. It just cost too much." On Kofi's grave, there was no title written. Only one line. He was afraid of love, until love taught him too late. And that is the truth that breaks the heart. Not that a billionaire rejected a child, but that fear stole time, and time never returned. Wealth waited. Pride waited. But love did not. The moral is simple, and it is strong. Do not delay love. Do not let fear speak louder than the heart. Because some chances knock only once, and when they leave, they do not come back. If this story moved you, touched your heart, or made you reflect on life, please subscribe to this channel, like this story, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Stay with us till the end of every tale, because African stories do not only entertain, they teach, they heal, and they remind us what truly matters.